Chapter 13. Be Mine, Johnny Valentine. At age 15, singing with the angels on Temple Hill was my defining moment. From that time forward, I didn't just believe the church was true. I knew it. Or at least I thought I knew it. Yet my burning testimony didn't take away my hormonal drive. I knew my tryst with the tub had to stop if I expected the Lord to bless me with a good man. As a teen, I was not a critical thinker. It never occurred to me to ask if the church's infliction of guilt and shame was conducive to my spiritual growth. It was part of the package of being Mormon. I was raised in a purity culture and was programmed to simply believe. I saw doctrine and truth as one and the same. By 1972, our bustling household had been reduced to my parents, my younger brother, and me. My two older sisters were married and gone. I was 17, and my sister, who was only 20 months older than I, had married at that age. She wasn't even a legal adult, but her early marriage shook my hopeless single status into a woebegone doomsday. It just didn't seem fair. My sisters were getting all the sex they wanted without having to repent afterward. Instead of getting sex, I had to go to high school. When I entered my senior year in the fall of '72, our Hayward bishop assigned a new home teacher for our family. We welcomed him wholeheartedly. Johnny Valentine placed his hand on his crossed knee, shook his thick strawberry blonde bangs from his brows, then winked at me from across the room. Was he flirting with me? He was warm, relaxed, natural. Unlike Jay, he didn't look like a Harlequin hero, but did it matter? What a personality! He was on fire! As he shared his love for the gospel, his eyes centered on each of us in turn, but mostly they would land on me, sparkling with an enthusiastic incandescence. I watched his playful smile grow wide as he talked about his missionary experiences. He had no idea what he was doing to me, sparking up fantasies of marriage and its benefits. He made it impossible for me to concentrate on holy matters. He was the kind of man I had been longing for. I knew if I ever had a chance to go out with Johnny, he'd show me respect. Every month on the third Sunday, my awesome home teacher showed up at our door to check on our family and present a spiritual lesson. Of course, I was always there, soaking up every word. When spring arrived, our family took Johnny with us boating out on the lake. I'll never forget when he sang and played Annie's song on his guitar. His smile was most beautiful when he sang. It was like watching the sun come out from behind the clouds. I spontaneously joined him, singing the harmony. As our voices blended and our eyes met, my pulse started to quicken. One Sunday afternoon, Johnny was casually talking to my folks when the topic of marriage came up. He unabashedly admitted his mom was concerned that he was 24 and still single. The brethren preached that if young men were not married within a year after returning home from their missions, they were a menace to society. I was okay with the pressure the church put on return missionaries. I liked the pressure even more when my dad approached me one day and said he believed Johnny was interested in me. Because my home teacher knew my family, I didn't have to put on any airs. I was just my bumbling, awkward self, and he seemed to be drawn to me anyway. At age 18, shortly after high school graduation, I came to my senses. This highly charged, extremely confident man was 6 years older than I was, and clearly out of my league. With his grounded sense of self and natural ability to relate to others, I had convinced myself that he wasn't interested, that he was more into the cute, flirtatious cheerleader types. Then one day, from out of the blue, he called and asked me out. I was dumbfounded. Once I moved past the shock and the reality of a date with him set in, I began to hyperventilate. Even my highly circumspect parents would break out the Martinellis and have a big Mormon bash if Johnny proposed to me. But I didn't want to get too excited. I was the girl who often wore her meals on her shirt, heart on her sleeve, and kept her social skills hidden somewhere in a cluttered drawer. I was the fire hazard toaster that someone pulled the plug on and
chose not to repair.
But if it did work out with Johnny, I would want to kiss God's feet with an apology for whining so much about my crappy life. When the night of our date finally arrived, with all my nervous binging, I could barely squeeze into my size 14 pants, the ones I reserved for my bloat days. Johnny arrived right on time and happened to be a perfect gentleman. As he held open the door of his green Chevelle, I plopped my ample tush on that seat so fast that I hope he didn't have time to notice it. But I had far more problems to worry about than my chunky booty. As his car softly purred its way across the bridge toward San Francisco, there was another sound, the high-pitched cry of panic in my head as I frantically thumbed my mental library for conversation starters, witticisms, anything. But I couldn't think of a single clever thing to say. Yet I had to give him kudos for trying to fill the dead space between us with his kinetic charm. Charm can only get a guy so far when his date has no personality reservoir to draw from. After that nerve-wracking evening, Johnny gave me another chance by inviting me as his +1 to his friend's wedding. It was a casual setting, a perfect venue for a do-over, but I still didn't have a clever comeback for his repartee. I finally understood why people take up smoking, so they can do something with their hands. I ate wedding cake. Lots of it. After that disastrous evening, my delightful friend chose to occasionally sit next to me during sacrament meetings, but no more dates. Still hopeful, my fingers stayed crossed. A month later, Johnny left for BYU. I just couldn't believe this was the end of our journey together. Deep in my bones, I knew he was the one for me. Perhaps I could reach out to his mom and get his address. Maybe if I wrote him and let him know how I genuinely felt, he'd get in contact with me again. The summer before I met my home teacher, I enrolled at Ricks College, an LDS institution located in Rexburg, Idaho. If I had only known the future, I probably would have enrolled at the Y so I'd be close to Johnny. But BYU has its drawbacks. It had a much larger, intimidating campus, and from what I had learned, Ricks was a tight-knit, friendlier, insular community. I was either very smart or very foolish to choose Ricks. To leave sunny California so I could trudge through blustering, snow-covered flatlands seemed insane. At the same time, it seemed like the perfect platform to pursue a husband. But now, all I could think about was Johnny. This would be his second year at the Y, and I figured he'd be married in no time. But what was I supposed to do? Fly to Provo and scoop him up? I never got his phone number from his mom, and I was already heading to Rexburg.